Hello and welcome back to Let's Have a Chat About Murder. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So whether you're going to listen to this case on the podcast or whether you're going to join me on my new YouTube channel, Let's Have a Chat About Murder, where I'd love you to subscribe and hit the like buttons and all this sort of stuff, I would be really grateful. So thank you very much for that. Now today's case is a case, I don't know, I've always been torn by this case. Really, I have. It's a shocking case, right? It really is. But there's reasons, right? Some people kill because they want to. Some people kill because they have to. Some people kill because of what's been done to them as a child. And it has distorted their view. It's shattered, really, their mind, their soul, their body, because of the abuse and everything else that may go along with some of these terrible traumatic childhood that eventually, I think, lead to something like this. So I am pulled with this case. I always have been. I actually do have empathy for this person. I really do, because I can understand why he's done it. And this is, I think when I look at this, and I'm going to call it actually the glass cage of Robert Maudsley, and we're going to call him Bobby, because Maudsley case is one, I think, that has been pushed out there as a shocking, horrible case, and he's a brain eater and all this. It's just madness, right? When you really understand what's really going on with Bobby Maudsley, or Robert Maudsley, it makes you think. This case will make you think about why this person did what he did. What we do to children can really damage them throughout their life. And for this man, it really does stem right from the day he was born, unfortunately. So, if you're ready, let's go. So we've got one man, 4 murders, 50 years in prison plus, right? 46 of them alone in a glass caged cell. I think this is the story of Bobby that needs to be told. The UK's real life, they say in the papers, Hannibal the Cannibal. It's bullshit, that part of it. It's just bullshit. He didn't eat anyone's brains. Yeah, he smashed the bloke's brain in. He didn't eat it. It's all bullshit. It was all to sell, papers and, sensationalise it. Listen, his crimes were terrible, and I'm not taking that away from him. He will tell you himself. He deserves every day of prison that he's got. He has never ever said that he doesn't. Never. Never. He knows that he can't be out on the street because of certain people or certain qualities, shall we say, in people that this man can't abide, because it brings back all that traumatic terror and pain and hurt that this man suffered from right when he was born. So I think we are now in this case going to look at one of the most chilling set of murders in the UK history. But there, as I said, there's reasons for it. Now, Bobby has been one of the longest serving prisoners in this country. I think he is now the longest serving prisoner in this country. The previous one was, of course, the Maud murderers, Ian Brady. Until he died, he was the longest serving person to serve in our British prisons. And now Bobby is now that one. But their cases are totally different. Their characters are totally different. Brady was a piece of work, really, in his own right. Bobby is not in that same class as criminal as him, and you should never distinguish the two. The only thing that relates them in any way is the amount of time that they've served in prison. And for Bobby, 50 years plus now The man, I think, is 72 now. So it's time to really go over this case and really highlight about his childhood and stuff. And we're also going to talk about his crimes, but in a practical way, in a way that explains maybe why he did it and his state of mind, right? Because obviously, as we go through this case, you will see that the damage from his childhood has caused him extremely, extremely difficult issues to live with over the years. So yes, as I said, the tabloids did dub him as this Hannibal the Cannibal. You know, after his first kill, which was outside of prison, the other 3 were inside of prison. And I think they then built him this purpose glass cage and put him in really because he was classed as too dangerous for people to go near. And, you know, you can understand why prison staff and everyone else was worried. To tell you the truth, I would have no problem myself, most of you would have no problem yourselves, sitting talking to Bobby, right? Because we are not the sort of people that he dislikes. We are not. We're just not. So I don't find him unsafe in that way. But for prison staff, for his mental state, for everything else that was going on in his life, especially in the early days when he first went into prison. Yeah, after literally committing 3 other murders inside a prison, this is the whole reason why they done that. And I think that was in Wakefield Prison, that they purposely built that cell. But really, this is the story of Bobby Maudsley, a murderer and a product, really, of a brutal abuse from a child. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. And one of the longest serving prisoners in the UK history. So I think let's go back now to where it actually began. So let's take our minds back now to 1953, Liverpool. Hard times in them days for everyone. And then we have Robert, or Bobby, that was born on this day. And he was born into this large working class family. I think, listen, by the time he was 6, right? The time he was 6, he was already in foster care because of his home was a literal hell. So you've had 6 years. So 1953, you have this bouncy baby boy born into a dysfunctional, aggressive, violent, abusive family. And by the time he was 6, he was removed. Now, 1953, right? They didn't remove many kids in them days. A lot of people give their kids up because they couldn't afford them. But he was taken into care. He went into foster care. The physical abuse, sexual abuse and humiliation that this boy had already suffered in his first 6 years of life. Imagine it. Imagine that. 6 years and you've already been through hell and back. So we're already damaged because we already now know, and if a lot of you are into psychology or understand, that the early years are what sets our character up. It helps us cope with life and everything else. If you've already got a distorted view by the age of 6 of what's meant to be normal, right, you're already on a downhill path and there's probably no coming back. And for Bobby, there really was no coming back. So then they removed him, and then the social services, because the family said we want him back. Now in them days you didn't get dole money, benefit monies and everything. So why did they want this back? These days you could argue they wanted it back for the money, right? And I'm telling you, it happens a lot. People want their kids back out of care because they claim the benefits, everything else. In 1953, or by this time, coming up to the 1960s, you weren't getting benefits for these kids. So why did they want him back? Anyway, the social services returned this boy back to this hellhole that had already destroyed him up until the age of 6. So any respite this boy may have had. But If it was a good foster parent this boy had, or a series of foster parents, then that would have been some normality in this boy's life. Then you pick this boy up and you put him back into the same situation. And the minute that door was closed, it all started again. The beating started, the humiliation, the put down. I mean, my God, thinking about how even this boy survived, right, his childhood up until the age of 10, 12, I don't know. He must have some strong willpower, really, because when you actually read his case, when you actually read into his, and we can't go into it now because there's so much on it, into his childhood, into the abuse and the suffering that this boy had. Yes, he's broken. As I said, he's shattered, right? These people, his own biological parents, shattered his mind, his body, and his soul. There is nothing left. There was nothing left of that child that was born in 1953. Nothing left. They took it all away. And these beatings and sexual abuse and every bit of abuse that this boy suffered continued on for years. Terrible, isn't it, really, when you think about it? So when he was a teenager, when he could go, when he could run, right, he ran. And he ran then to London. Now, right, the streets of London now are dangerous. The streets of London in the early 60s were still dangerous, right? You've always had perpetrators out there, especially when you talk about abuse and all this sort of stuff. And when you have now a young teenage boy that's been abused all his life, ends up on the streets of London, you know, they used to say it's paved to gold. It's not paved to gold anymore, it's paved with shit, really. I'm telling you, literally. I have to put signs up now. But in them days, I think Bobby wanted to get away as quick as he could. He needed to run. And that boy ran, right? He ran and ran and ran. He got to London and then he ended up working on the streets of London, I suppose, to survive, right? And he turned to sex work because really, from the day this boy was born, that's all he knew, right? That's all he knew. And I've said this before when we talk about sex workers, whether they're male or female. Most of these people do not do it by choice, right? Some may enjoy it, but most do it out of necessity, to live, to survive, right? Or that's all they're used to. And on them streets of London, this is where he met this John Farrell. You know, sooner or later it would have been someone, right? It would have been someone. Because this boy was already prone, this boy was already in the mindset, right, of feeling worthless, no good. He was being humiliated all his life. It was coming. Something bad was going to happen at some point. And he just happened to meet this John Farrell on this day for sex. And it didn't go well. So on the 14th of March 1974, Bobby was about 21 at that time, so he spent a long time on the streets, right? He was well homed within what he had to do to survive. And then he meets Farrell, who is 30 years old, and a client of his. But during one meeting, Farrell then shows Bobby these photos of children that he had sexually abused. Right, so you are now showing Bobby, who's lived a traumatic life, and as I think he saw them photos of that abuse of them children. Everything from his childhood and his experiences rose up, right? It rose up. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. It's one thing having sex with these people for money. But when they show you this sort of stuff, and he probably thought Bobby would be into this because he probably did, right? He tried it. But it flicked a switch. Something in Bobby changed, right? And we all know what it was. It's anger, fear, frustration, hurt, everything that's going on in this boy's body now, a 21-year-old man that can fight back, that can say, do you know what, I'm not fucking having this anymore. right? And I'm telling you, he snaps. He snaps. He did. He strangled Farrell, stabbed him, hit him with a hammer. I think he took every bit of frustration he had out on Farrell that he wanted to do to everyone else that had abused him from the day this boy was born. That's what happened to Farrell. He showed them photos to the wrong person, and he was not expecting that reaction. Of course, this man did not survive this attack, because you now have a man that's furious, right? Pissed off. Every part of his body now. He is now a killer, and you are not getting away. This man could not get away from him. Now think of now, Bobby's done this, right? He's murdered this man. Every part of his body now is, I think, it's a way of him getting rid of a lot of that shit that he carried around for all these years. But you see now, he has guilt, right? So he didn't run away from the scene. He wasn't chased down or hunted, because in them days he probably could have got away with this murder. Do you know what he did? He literally walked into a police station and he confessed. There was no attempt to run, hide, do anything else, blame anyone else. He told them, I've killed him. That's what he did. So when we hear about Bobby's cases later on, we know that's not true, right? What they're saying about him. This man really, I think, just needed to say it. To say he didn't want that burden of carrying that weight around with him, as well as the other trauma he had in his life. This was a split-second decision. Well, I don't even think it was a split-second decision. I think it was such a shock to him, them photos, that when Farrell showed him that there was nothing that would have stopped him. He didn't, I think, realise at the point what he was doing. He totally, in legal terms, lost control. And so when he really come back round to thinking, after he'd done it and he's looking at what he's done, that he was guilt-ridden by that. Because I don't think Bobby ever wanted to be an abuser, physically or any other way, like what he had suffered. I don't think he did. So when we think now, what happens next then? Oh, it was anything but therapeutic, wasn't it, really? Because I think in 1970s, 60s, 70s, people didn't really understand so much about what childhood abuse can do to someone, what mental health is really all about, and how Bobby has got serious mental health issues because of his upbringing that made him do this murder. There's no doubt about it. So when you then hand yourself in, he knew he was going to get punished. I don't think he thought there would be anything different. In them days they didn't. He knew he was going to go to prison, and he accepted that because he's always accepted what he has done. He's always took responsibility for every crime that he's done. So he was sent to Broadmoor Hospital. Now, because of his crime and stuff in them days, yeah. But the thing is, in Broadmoor, you have a lot of a mixture of different category prisoners. And in them days, segregation was part of it, but it wasn't really a big part of what we have now, where we segregate really everyone, especially in Broadmoor. Bobby then found out that there were people convicted of child molestation in there, sexual offences against kids. So you have a person now, which I don't think anyone actually thought maybe that was his real reason. I don't know if anyone even asked him why he killed Farrell, to tell the truth. I think they just thought it was a murder because he was a street worker, sex worker, and that was why he done it. But you've put now a person into Broadmoor, into close proximity to other inmates that are totally against your moral beliefs and the beliefs that you know that you can't handle yourself, you're not mentally capable of controlling your behaviour when you are near someone that does such offences. So it was a wrong move, but as I said, you can't blame anyone in that time because not many people realised, I think one, why he did his first crime, but two, what was really going on in his mind. I don't think they did. So as we can see, people like that just don't sit right with him, right? So in February the 26th, 1977, Bobby and another patient, David Cheeseman, locked themselves in a room with David Francis, a convicted child or kid abuser, right? They did. We all know what's going to happen, and it did. So for 9 hours, 9 hours, two men, right, have got one person, and they both didn't like these sort of people. They tortured him for 9 full hours before they killed him. Now, I would think, where the bloody hell were the staff here? 9 hours, right? Shocking, isn't it, really? Now, some this is where it comes out. Some claims that Bobby ate some of Francis' brain with a spoon, but the autopsy report disputes this. So it's all was sensationalised. Don't forget, we're talking about 1977 here. 26th of February 1977. We didn't have internet, we didn't have social media stuff, we had newspapers, and newspapers wanted to sell a story. And wasn't it a great story to sell, really? That, yes, really, if they just stuck to the facts of the case, that would have sold the story. I think, though, the sensationalisation of this, the brain eater and all this, you know, the cannibal and all this sort of stuff, bullshit, just sold papers. It was actually proven under autopsy this was not true. So don't believe any of that. But he's still, I think it's still stuck, didn't it? This Hannibal the Cannibal is still stuck. And really, the media, you know, had their monster, didn't they? They had it. And that for years, 50 years, this man has still been named, you know, Hannibal the Cannibal, the monster, the brain eater. I mean, what a load of shit, really, when you think about it. But that was 1970s for you, when they had nothing else to do but to sell their papers, and they had to sensationalise it. This case was bad, as I said. It was bad. The facts of this case are absolutely terrible, too terrible for me to show you. But you can understand where this crime is coming from when someone has been tortured for 9 hours and then murdered, and that was 2 people torturing this man, right? So the brain bit, I don't know why they needed to use it, but they did. It's all bullshit, so don't believe it. But Bobby has always said, right, and admitted to this crime and everything else, and took responsibility for every crime that he has done. After this Francis killing, right, Bobby was deemed then to be too dangerous for Broadmoor Hospital. He was. And clearly, right, because there's not enough staff, or there wasn't enough staff at that point to manage this sort of a person. So then he was moved to Wakefield Prison, one of the UK's toughest prisons, and no one, I don't think, expected what he did next. I just don't think they did. You know, I don't know what they thought they was doing. Now, you know, Wakefield Prison is well known for its category prison. It's an A-grade category prison, and it's Monster Mansion and all this sort of stuff, whatever you want to call it. But in them days, I don't think they really knew how to handle prisoners like Bobby. Because I still think, even after the second murder he had committed, that they really understood his reasons why he committed it. I don't think they did. Or they was too, you know, they just didn't even think, let's sort of work out, because if you can't look after him in Broadmoor, which is, you know, then you're going to send him to Wakefield, which is a prison, again, you're going to have prisoners in there, which are the prisoners that he does not like. And then he comes across on July the 29th, 1978, in one day, Bobby kills 2 inmates. Not one, 2 in one day. July 29th, 1978. So a year after he's killed the first one in Broadmoor. And a couple of years after he's killed the one on the outside. So this is where now our 4 murders come into it. 1 outside of prison, 3 inside. So first, Stanley Darwood, a prisoner in prison for killing his wife and sexually assaulting her. Right? Told you, he doesn't like him. Bobby lured him into a cell, grotted him, stabbed him, and then goes hunting for the next one because he knows, right? He now knows there's loads of them in there. He can take his pick, can't he? We're talking about a person that is enraged. He's I don't know what's going on in his mind, and I'd love to know what was going on. I don't even know if Bobby knew what was going on in his mind at that point, but listen, he's on the hunt. And then he lures another prisoner, but that doesn't work, right? That prisoner weren't having none of it. So then he walks into William Roberts' cell, a man jailed for attempting rape of a 4-year-old child. Bobby then stabs him and then bashes his head against the wall until his skull cracks. Then he calmly walks to the guards and says to them, "You'll be short. You'll be too short on the roll call this afternoon." Now, does that sound to you like someone that is in their right frame of mind? No, it doesn't, right? Because all this stems back from 1953, Liverpool, when this boy was literally living tortured hell of his home life, abused in every possible way, humiliated, and this is the result of that, right? This is the result of it. And again, he has never said he didn't do it. He has never said, right, he doesn't deserve to be in prison. He's always said he does deserve to be in prison. And to tell you the truth, I don't think Bobby could live out in a normal now society. I don't think Bobby could live in a normal society when he was first on the streets of London. But unfortunately in them days there was no other help for him. So this is a circumstance of what's come from his broken, terribly broken, shattered childhood. That's where it really comes from, all this. And that's why this case to me, pulls me in different directions, because I don't think anyone should murder anyone. But sometimes when we look at the mind, the human mind is so broken and twisted and shattered like his reality is different from ours. His thoughts of normal life are different from ours. He's never had a normal life. And for that reason is why I think we need to look at this case in a different light. I do. I think if Bobby could have got help after the first murder, if like today he would have had different counselling and stuff and maybe questioned on more why he done it. Would it have saved these others? I'm not sure. Would it have helped him? Probably. But obviously, as you can see from these horrific murders that he has committed, there is no way on this earth that this man will ever get out of prison, without a doubt. And I don't think, as I say, he could handle it anyway. I don't. So then what do you do then with a prisoner that you cannot control? What happens to that person? Where can you put him? Can't put him in solitary confinement, can you? For nearly 50 years. So in these prisons, right, and as I said, at that point, I don't think this prison knew what the bloody hell to do with this man. But what you have got to also understand that in a prison, they have a duty of care of all prisoners, right? So you can't have an inmate, no matter how disturbed they are or what they feel about other prisoners, going around killing prisoners. You just can't have it, right? So what do you do with this man then? What could they do? So in 1983, they built him a custom-made cell in the basement of Wakefield Prison. There were steel walls, bulletproof glass, and 24-hour surveillance. A prison, really, inside a prison, wasn't it? That's really what it was, a prison inside a prison. And he lived there for 40 years. 40 years. Now, when you have to think, and when Bobby talks, and I think it's his nephew that he talks to, and his nephew says a lot of stuff, but you've got to think, for 40 years he ate alone, slept alone, and spoke to no one, only the guards and sort of stuff. He had no real human contact. The guards, I think, well, because the guards would have been scared of him, right? The guards, I don't think, would have had much to fear from him unless he had heard rumours about them, but you'd have to be careful. So they would slide the food under the door and stuff. And that went on for 40 years. I spoke about isolation and the damage that isolation can do to a brain and to break people much more quicker than anything else. But I think for Robert, or Bobby at that point, I think he needed it. He made that cell his own, right? It was his only home or quiet space that this man had ever had. But for 40 years though, how do we expect people then to come out and mix into a normal, say once you want to take him out of this environment, and they did, and we'll go over that in a little while. How do they feel about that? Because if you have had a home, and this, Bobby classes this as his home, this cell in Wakefield Prison, that was safe, silent and stuff, and then you're moved from it, but you've had absolutely years and years of isolation. Spoke to no one, ate with no one. It's terrible, isn't it, really? You know, sometimes, years ago he would have got the death penalty, wouldn't he? And sometimes I think that's better. But for him, I think, yeah, it was solitude. It was peace, quiet. He got used to it, right? He did. He got used to it and coped with it because he was so damaged, so broken, so untrusting of everyone, so hurt. You know, as I said, his mind, body and soul was shattered from a very young child. So maybe that's why he not enjoyed it, but he needed that space on his own. He couldn't cope with everything else that was going on, because I'm telling you, if another prisoner had been in there or had seen another prisoner that he felt was that type of offender, he would have done it again, without a doubt. So listen, who is he then? Let's talk about who he is. I think with Bobby, every man that Bobby killed was either convicted or suspected of sexual abusing children. Now, we are not allowed in this country to be judge and jury and everything else and executioner. That's not our job. That wasn't Bobby's job. So I'm not justifying that. But I think, as I said, his childhood made him think that he was. I don't believe in that. I think if he'd had help, he would have been fine. This wasn't random. It wasn't. Bobby later claimed that he was driven by memories of his own child abuse, his own abuse. He saw himself as a kind of vigilante, delivering justice that no one else would. I can understand that part of it, right? I can. Deal with many people that have been abused in such terrible ways that think justice isn't being done. They're probably only going to get a couple of years, come out and do something else. So he took on that thing of this vigilantism, but it's not his job, right? It's not, he isn't, some of these were only accused of it, right? They're only accused of it. All right, some were convicted of it, but that still doesn't give us a right as people to take other people's lives. You know, that's what the law's there for. And I know the law doesn't work that well. I know it. And I know some of you will feel that what he's done is right. I know that. But when we look at it on the bigger scale, we can't allow that sort of thing. We just can't. I think what it was, I don't know if he did, if it was that really, when you think about, when you look back on his whole case file, I don't think this was justice he was trying to get. This was rage, obsession, right? This is weaponized. His whole childhood then becomes this weapon. His brain is so full of this crap that's happened to him all his life. It weaponized him. 4 men are dead, right? 4 men are dead. And Bobby has to live in this glass cage for them acts he's done. Is it worth it? Is it worth it for anyone to give their life up for vigilantism? Not really. It's not. Because yes, you've took people out, but but you sacrificed all your life. And I do believe that with help and stuff, if it had come early enough for Bobby, he would have been able to live a good life. But he just never got the chance. He never got the chance. Anyway, so being released from isolation after all them years. It's a difficult one. As I said, isolation can damage the brain more than anything else. It can damage your personality and everything. So now what for Bobby? So in March 2025, Bobby went on hunger strike. Now the reason the guards took away personal items, including the PlayStation and stuff like that, that's sort of part of it. A month later, I think the impossible happened, didn't it, really? He was moved. Moved. So you took this man now out of a glass cage that you purposely built in a prison within a prison, from Wakefield to Whitemore. Now another high security prison, but this time on a wing with other inmates. And they would have been selected inmates, right? They would have been. Now this decision was made, and it really made headlines, right? Because given his past and his patterns, I suppose, of attacking and that, people were asking, is Bobby still dangerous? I would say, even at 72, which he now is, put in a circumstance, maybe I think because of the isolation and everything else, listen, anyone can be dangerous because of his upbringing. I don't know. I don't know. Now, Bobby says he went on hunger strike because of they was moving him, and he had been in that cell 40 years and that was his home. And of course he was distraught, right? You know, if you haven't walked out your door in a week, you can get a bit anxious, right? This man hasn't walked out of a cell properly in 40 years. And we've moved him because the policies have to change, right? You cannot keep people in isolation for that long because now we know the dangers of that. So I don't know if he is still a dangerous man at 72. As I said, I wouldn't have any fear of him, right? But then I've never done anything wrong. So, but I think the isolation now would make me more worried about him than his crimes would, because it's unfair. But when you've had someone in prison, especially in isolation for 40 years, and then you move into a different prison, you've removed them from somewhere that they're comfortable, they feel comfortable, now the anxiety is coming back up, right? It's there for him. And he says he went on a hunger strike for that reason. He wanted to go home. So he wanted to go back to Wakefield because that's where he thought he was going to die, right? Live out his days there. Because in Bobby's mind, he was happy with that. That is his safe place. But you've moved him out now to a different prison on a wing where I don't think even he knows if he can be trusted. Do you see what I mean? So you've got all these different anxieties going on and all these different pressures. You've also been isolated for so long, all of a sudden there's people around. It's a very difficult situation, isn't it? And I can understand why he feels anxious, because him himself, I don't think, really knows what's going on. and whether he's dangerous. So if he can't answer that question, we certainly can't. But yeah, I would have been less worried about him if he hadn't moved, because he was so used to it. He enjoyed it. It was his comfort. It was his home. That's what he believed. He'd made it his home in 40 years. He was used to it. Peace, calm, quiet, and nobody hurted him. So let's have a look at this when you think about poor Bobby. And I do feel for him, right? I do. I have empathy for a lot of people, and that's depending on, you know, who it is and everything else. But because I can understand where this man is coming from his past, right? I don't agree with what he's done, as I've said to you before, but I do have empathy for him. I do. So I suppose 4 victims, a life of solitude, which he's had, a legacy built on rage and revenge, I think, and myths around this man, which has made him, you know, into this monster that everyone needs, I suppose, in their life to sell stuff and promote their papers and everything else. He is not. Bobby isn't Hannibal Lecter, right? He isn't. He didn't eat any brains, proven by the autopsy. He's someone more human and maybe more terrifying, I suppose, in a way, because we don't really understand it. We've locked someone away now for so long without really understanding why and stuff, I think, over the years. I think this man who became what I suppose we hated most, right? You know, because of the way it was portrayed about him. When we talk about people like Bobby, prisoners like Bobby, vulnerable prisoners, already damaged, broken, destroyed before they've even committed their first crime, right? Then he killed the first person out there because of these photos that were shown to him, or images that were shown to him of these kids, that then brought back this overwhelming rage. I think everything that happened to Bobby in his early life, that first victim got. Don't forget though, he did walk, didn't he, out straight into a police station and say, I killed him, right? As I said, he has never not admitted what he has done. Goes to Broadmoor, kills, right? Kills a person. Again, admits it, doesn't deny it. Then goes to Wakefield and kills 2 more on the same day. And if he could have got some more, he would have. I believe that he would have. When we look at our children and we look at what's going on in our children's lives, and we see things and we hear things in the news which are absolutely horrific acts towards children, every form of abuse going, and even when we talk about sexual abuse or whatever to children, we are not highlighting enough about just the physical abuse as well that goes along with it. That can also be as damaging to these children. We have registers, don't we, for sex offender registers, people that, you know, hurt children and everything else, right? Database. The government was asked only recently, would they consider now doing a database for people that harm children? And they said no. They said no. Any harm, abuse, humiliation affects a child, especially someone like Bobby, who was born in 1953, and from the day he was born, he was abused in one form or another. And this is a result. So I don't know why the government won't do a harm registry, because our children need to be protected, not just from, you know, from every part of harm. They need to be protected. And people should not be allowed to have their children back if they've harmed them in any way. It highlights a lot of things, this case. But I hope you've enjoyed it. It's just a quick overview of him. There are some more details that we could go into, really, about, you know, they call him the serial killer, is this, is that. I think he's now 72-year-old, trying to get used to his move, mixing with people because of the isolation he suffered. And we will just see where this takes us, this case. But I wish Bobby well. I do. Because I think he was broken as a child, and all the way through his adult life up until committing that first crime he had no help at all. And I think even in prisons after the first murder, and that no one really understood why. They didn't understand why, but of course we have to have sympathy for anyone that is murdered. But there are reasons sometimes why people do it. So thanks for watching. Till the next time. Bye bye.